Hi everyone, my name is Rachael. I am the owner of Hourly Training and Consultancy, and I am very proud and privileged to be able to speak to you all today on what I think is an incredibly important and powerful topic, which is mental health in shining a spotlight on supporting the well-being of gender non-conforming people. Okay, and how I want to do this, if you watch any of my other content, you will see that a lot of what I do is telling stories, and I think stories are a very emotive way of getting a point across, and getting people to, engage with their empathy side of things and to see things from other people's point of view. And I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me at Christmas. And the moral of this story is, and I suppose you could call this the talk title, I guess, if you wanted to be really official about it, is to treat the person, not the gender. Okay. And what happened to me? So I'm 36 years old. I know makeup is a very powerful thing. It can make you look younger, it can make you look older. And I was just doing what I bet a lot of you do. I was on the laptop. Had the TV on in the background, and I went to close the laptop, and you know how you move forward and you go to put the laptop down, and I couldn't move my arm, and it was a very odd sensation. Never had anything like that happen before, and it was like my brain was sending the signal to my arm, but my arm didn't want to do it, and I was very, very confused at that point. And I went to the stairs and managed to shout at my wife to come down. My lovely wife came downstairs, and I spoke to her about what had happened, and she said, "I think we need to get you checked out." And I was like, you know what, I actually agree with you on this front. And we called 111 because we didn't think it was an emergency. A little bit silly on our behalf there. So we called 111, and they advised that the GPs would be open soon, so go to your GP, get it checked out. It's probably, migraines or something like that. Went to my doctor. They sent me to the hospital to get checked out, to do some neurological tests. And what was interesting was the level of worry kind of shifted when they saw on my records that I was trans. And by that, what I mean is that they immediately saw that I was a transgender patient and started to tie everything into me being trans. So it immediately shifted from, oh, you have a neurological issue, to this must be your hormones that are affecting you. This must be, what you're doing to your body to transition from male to female is more than likely what's causing this, and this was without any tests being done. There was no scans or any kind of blood tests or anything like that. This was all just going off my actual records, because they saw the transgender marker, as it were, on my actual file. And while I was in the hospital, I had another weird episode where I cracked my neck, and which is a really bad habit. Don't do that, by the way. And I lost vision in my eye for about 30 seconds, give or take. And I thought, oh, it's just, it must be a pinched nerve or something, maybe like my optical nerve. I'm not a doctor or anything. But I thought maybe that's what's causing this, And I told the doctor, and they didn't seem too worried about it, to be honest. And eventually, after being in there for about 4 hours, which is about the norm in this country, you can't really complain about that. That is about the norm. Doctor came over to me, took me into a side room, and said, "Look, we know that you have a long history of migraines. We think that because you're taking estrogen and you're taking, various medications to transition, that they've made your migraines a lot worse, and that's why, you're getting these kind of weird symptoms now." I'm not a doctor, but I would have called it more than a weird symptom when someone can't move their arm. So I got discharged, and I thought, wow, okay, that's cool. I'm happy with that. That's great. I'm out of the hospital, and I don't need to worry about that anymore. It was just been a funny phase that my body was going through, and when you get to your mid-30s, your body does start doing weird things. So if you're not there yet, you've got that to look forward to. So enjoy, and yes, so I went home and I started reading up on neck injuries and how, you can have pain in your neck and things that you can do to relieve it. And I stumbled upon a YouTube video of two guys in America who are chiropractors, and they were talking about how you can, manipulate your neck certain ways and it'll help with pain and migraines and stuff. And I thought, oh, wow, I suffered from migraines for the longest of times. Maybe my neck is to blame for it all, So one faithful evening when I was in the bath, this was on Christmas Eve, I did one of these neck stretches that the two guys on YouTube had told me to do, and luckily my wife was with me, and I lost sensation. It literally crept down the entire side of my body. It all went really tingly, and I couldn't move the right side of my body. My vision went completely. It was literally like a curtain coming down over my eyes, and I thought, this isn't right. And I tried to speak to my wife and say, I need you to call an ambulance, and it was like slurred, and I couldn't get the words out. And I was very, very scared, and a lump developed in my throat. It felt like, I couldn't breathe, like I had an apple in my throat. And my wife stayed with me, tried to calm me down. I just remember her saying, you're okay, you're going to be all right, you're fine. And she called a paramedic. Paramedics came out. I'd managed to lift myself out of the bath, which was great. And they looked at me, they talked to me for a little while. They did my blood pressure, the usual kind of tests that you get done at those times. And they said, yeah, we think you've had something of a panic attack. It's probably anxiety. You need to get yourself, good and drunk, was the advice that I was given, believe it or not. Which was good advice and terrible advice at the same time. But they didn't want to take me to hospital. They said that, it's Christmas, it's going to be really busy. You don't want to go into hospital on Christmas, so just have yourself a good drink and stay home. So I went for a walk with my wife. And I knew, I just knew something wasn't right, and we called the ambulance back out. I got took into hospital on that evening. I wasn't treated as an emergency or anything. I was basically in the waiting room for several hours before anyone actually looked at me, and I went in eventually, and they took me up to the stroke ward, which I was a little concerned about, because I thought, well, no one's even so much looked at me yet. They think I've had a stroke. What's going on? And they did scans, and without boring you, they did a lot of tests, and the doctor came over to me and he said, oh, would you like to see a picture of your brain? And now I've had migraines most of my life, and I thought, wow, yes, I'd love to see a picture of my brain. I'd like to see what's responsible for causing me all this pain for the majority of my life, And he took me over and he said, right, this is where you had your first stroke, and this is where the second one was, and this is the third, and that's the fourth. And I'm like, pardon? What? He said, yes, you've had 4 strokes. There's 4 strokes on there. And he said, did no one tell you? And I said, well, no. No, this is the first I'm hearing about it. And he said, right, okay, so come with me and sit down and we'll talk. And we talked, and it turned out that I'd suffered something called, they didn't know this at the time, but I won't bore you with everything that happened there. But one of the tests they did as I was leaving, it turned out that I'd suffered something called a vertebral artery dissection, which is where the lining of your artery gets damaged, and as the blood passes through, it causes like a little flap to close on the artery, and it stops the blood flow getting to your brain. And that happened several times over the space of about a week and a half to me. So why am I telling you all this? Well, I'm telling you all this because the initial experience I had of going to the hospital when I'd only had 2 episodes at that point, they didn't do any tests. They didn't check anything. They just looked at me and said, this person's transgender, you know what, estrogen, we know estrogen can make headaches worse. Let's just put it down as that. And for me, it's not my place to say what is the right form of treating or looking into what's making someone poorly, because I'm not a doctor, and I have the utmost respect for the doctors in this country. I really do. And they're under so much pressure, and they've got so much time, so little time, should I say, to do what they do, and they do amazing work, so don't ever forget that. But in my experience on that particular day, it could have been so damning to my future, because they treat me as a trans woman rather than just treating me as a person and thinking this person's had a neurological episode, this person needs to have a scan done to see what's gone on. And they basically pigeonholed their ideas on the fact that I'm trans. And this is something that a lot of trans people do worry about, that they aren't taken seriously when they go into hospitals. And the focus a lot of the time seems to be on, oh, what ward will a trans woman be put on? Will they put on a male ward or a female ward? And that's what the news people want you to focus on, and they try to distract you from the real issues here that's going on. And the real issues is that we want to be treated as people. We want person-centric treatment. We don't want to have to worry about whether or not we're trans when we're getting medical treatment. Look at the whole person, not just one element of it. And I think that would be so important moving on for any health professionals watching this. Hopefully they'll not see this as me criticizing them. They'll see this as me trying to prevent other people going through something that was absolutely terrifying in my life, and it could have killed me. Strokes are not something to be messed around with. They could have killed me, and they could have had life-changing events, and it caused a lot of problems for me with the level of communication between departments as well, because even after that happened, they still immediately jumped to, it must be because you're taking feminizing hormones, you're taking estrogen, so we're going to have to stop that because we don't know if that's what's causing it. We don't know. And what amazes me about all this is that we wait around 44 months, in some cases if you're lucky, to get seen by a gender professional to be able to issue hormones, because they are the only people who are qualified to actually do that. You can't get hormones through your GP. They have to be recommended by a gender identity clinic. And what I found amazing was that in the space of a couple of minutes of me having a test done that showed I'd had strokes, that doctors who apparently aren't able to issue my hormones were quite happy to say, no, you're not allowed to have them anymore. And I had to get in touch with my gender identity clinic on my own and tell them what had happened, inform them, what had gone on, that I'd had a stroke and that it was an emergency situation. This was over the Christmas, and it wasn't until New Year's Day that I was able to get a phone call back from the gender clinic, and they were able to say, what's happened, and I told them the whole story like I'm telling you now. And they had to get in touch with my doctors and say, look, that's not what's caused this. This is a vertebral artery dissection. You can tell by how the symptoms are, by how it's worked. This hasn't been caused by hormones, So even after I'd had the strokes, it was still being pinned on the fact, your trans, hormones are bad. Don't do hormones, they'll give you a stroke. And that's a very simplistic way of how it was being put across to me by the hospital. So it took a little bit of time, and I'm talking a matter of weeks, and I managed to get everything sorted out. But I'd have liked to have just been able to deal with the fact that I'd nearly died at 36 in front of my wife in the bath, as opposed to having to worry about taking my hormones and the fact that they took them off me. And it would have just been nice if that communication had have been there between departments to be able to talk to each other and have that conversation before it actually affected me, So yeah, that's the other takeaway that I'd like people to get from this is, have that communication, look at the person, look at what departments they might be involved in. In my case, the gender identity clinic is very much paramount to me as an individual, and it's very important that they're kept in the loop, because they're the ones that decide my future on how my ongoing happiness of being a trans woman is affected, as far as transitioning is concerned. And I can't understate the importance of that enough. Okay. So yeah, thank you everyone. I hope that has all been, enlightening for you, and I hope that it has gave you an insight as to how scary it can be going into hospital when you don't know what's wrong with you. It is life-threatening, and you also happen to be trans as well, so you've also got the other worries about people looking at you and people judging you, and you always have those worries as a trans woman anyway, but then you're literally under a microscope when you're in hospital, which makes it even worse. So please, next time, if you are in the medical health profession, if you have someone who is trans, whatever way, male to female, female to male, non-binary, gender non-conforming, whatever you have, okay, in front of you, treat the person, all right? There's a famous line in a movie, and I'll probably be paraphrasing this a little bit, but it was a Robin Williams movie called Patch Adams, and there's a bit at the end of the movie when he says, if you treat the disease, you win, you lose. If you treat the person, you win every time. And if I was intelligent enough to be in the medical profession, I'd want that to be my mantra. I'd want that to be my takeaway. So please treat the person, don't treat the gender. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed that, and enjoy the rest of this amazing event. Okay. All the best. Take care. Bye now.